Welcome to the Men of Action podcast, where we bring on the stellar and the best of the men who have overcome trials in their life so that way they can go from loser that they felt like to that victor and that hero that's within themselves. And today, I got a special guest. I'm your host, Zach, and today's guest is Noah Justice. Noah, welcome to the Men of Action podcast.
Thank you so much, Zach. It's a real honor to be on here with you. You've been such an inspiration just for me on Twitter, watching all of your content. So the opportunity to get to have a full conversation with you here, I've been looking forward to it for a while, even fighting jet lag and all of that. So, that just tells you a little bit of the caliber of these kinds of conversations. I'm so excited. So let's get this started.
Yeah, let's go. So, Noah, tell us a little about yourself, and hopefully the jet lag's not too bad.
Nah, I'll be fine. I've operated on worse. So, my name is Noah Justice, as you guys can see. I've had a bit of a journey. Right now, I am a health coach for busy professionals who want to lose weight and gain muscle for life. The way I do that is I actually take them in a sense on my own journey, just a little bit of not necessarily, getting the fitness really, real dialed in, or even necessarily the diet really dialed in, because there's so much content out there that already does that.
Mhm.
What I focus on is helping people get the right mindset in order. Because once you get the right mindset, and mindset is going to really come down to a couple different fundamentals. First, you want to get your vision right. So you
Mhm.
have an idea of where you're going. Second, you want to have the right reason for getting there. So, that's going to be, in a sense, your motivation. And the third big thing for mindset really is just discipline, getting yourself to take the basic action steps you need to do. And so those are the three key things that I work on with, my clients. I help them get a vision set up of where they want to go. Unlike my hair, which is just flying all over the place. Um, I then help them figure out what their motivation is. If I'm working with a dad, I'll be like, hey, you want to be healthy for your kids so that you can be there for them when you're older and when they're older and they need you more in their life. Or, if you're talking to someone who's a young professional, you're like, okay, hey, you want to get healthy so that when you're continuing to go down this career path you've got in 20, 30, 40 years, you're not having these 20 somethings pass you at a million miles an hour.
That's right.
You still have the energy to be able to keep going. And I bring in all of those elements, and then I tie in a little bit of the fitness, and I tie in a
Mhm.
little bit of the diet, and I help bring that all together so that as a client who's working with me, you can actually build the right environment to get the life you want. And when you do that, everything just falls into place. You don't have to worry about, oh, I got to stay on this diet, because it's part of your life.
Right.
And that's the real goal there. And how that, not to ramble too much, but how that mirrors my own personal journey is
Mhm.
that's basically the same steps I went through. I
Okay.
had to, I had tried a little bit of fitness, and I had tried some, diet stuff in my early 20s, late teens, trying to figure out, because I was horribly overweight. I probably had a BMI of 30 plus or more. I was like 5'11", 230 pounds at my heaviest, no muscle. I had
Mm.
no definition. It was all sitting in my gut there, and a lot of it in my face. And I was pretty self-conscious about it.
Sure.
And I tried a couple different things, but it wasn't really until I actually started to get my vision right of what I wanted things to look like, and how, I didn't want to be where I was for the rest of my life. And I knew that if I didn't get my life together by the time I, turned 25, 26,
Right.
it wasn't, probably wasn't going to happen after that. So I set my vision of what I wanted things to look like. I wanted to be healthy for the rest of my life.
Hmm.
I got my motivation correct, which was, hey, I'm married now. I want to have kids down the road. If I'm going to be given, my wife and my family the best chance of success in providing for them in the best way that I can and leading them in the best way that I can, I have to be the healthiest I can to do that. That is my duty. That is a bare minimum duty I have, and I was failing at it horribly. And so once I got that motivation together, everything else just started to fall into place.
Mm.
And so that's a little bit of my story and my journey there, and really the big reason why I do this. I want to help men get their lives together so that they can be the leaders that they need to be, not just for their families, but down the road for their communities, because that's how we're going to change the world. You change the world one person at a time.
That's right. I mean, I I mean, that's been a motto of mine for like years is, impact one person at a time, one life at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you focus on mindset because mindset is truly everything. So,
It
how do you
is.
help someone craft a vision? I know vision boards
Oh,
are
that's a
really
good
popular.
question.
I know you kind of focus on guys. So, how do you kind of make it kind of where it's more like tailored to them, especially when they're focused maybe more like, let's say, the masculine side or the feminine side?
Yeah. So, part of it is you have to cut through a lot of the, I guess, not red tape, but a lot of the just clutter that's out there in the world right now, because everywhere you look, everyone's talking about masculinity these days.
Right.
You've got people on the negative side saying, oh, too much masculinity is toxic.
Right.
We have our opinions about that. I think they're dead wrong, but that's beside the point. And then you
Hmm.
have the people on the other side. You've got, like, the Andrew Tates and stuff, who are like, you need to be hyper masculine. You need to be, domineering. You need to have all of this energy and just be out there. And I'm like, well, hold on. These are two extremes,
Right.
two extremes that really need to be tempered with each other, because you can't just be a man who is, always domineering, because that is toxic in a lot of ways.
Oh,
But you
absolutely.
also can't be a man who just keels over. You have to have a spine, because there's a lot of things that we're called to do. I honestly believe we're called to do by God, to stand up and actually, stand for what is right and be a positive force of change in the world. And so what I do is, when I'm talking with my clients, I help them, kind of come together, either from one extreme or the other typically. And I help them realize that they've been given this gift of masculinity. They've been given
Mhm.
this gift of strength, of drive, of will for a reason. And they're called to be stewards of it. And when you're called to be a steward of something, you need to know where you're going to take it and what you're going to use it with. And so once I kind of bring them back to that kind of that center line there, more of the middle of where you want to be,
Right.
that's when I start asking them some pretty deep questions. One of the big questions I like to ask is, where do you see yourself being in 5 years if you stay where you're at right now? The reason
Mhm.
I like this question is because it gets people to start thinking about, hey, where would I be if, I was where I am now for the next 5 years? And almost always people are able to realize that, hey, my health, it's already starting to fail just a little bit. It's not where I want to. In 5 years of doing the same things I'm doing right now, if I don't change anything, that's going to be even further downhill. If I'm not, dead or suffering from other health issues, I run into a lot of people who, hear that question and they're like, oh gosh, I haven't even thought of that. And I think part of that's just because we live so in the moment.
Right.
Our society is built very much as an instant gratification society, and while there's a lot of good that's come from it, I think there's a lot of blind spots, is a really soft way to put it, that we need to be aware of. But once I get them to realize, the path that they're on, that how that's going to lead them in a wrong direction, and that's not where they want to go, I then start asking them the positive questions and ask them, one of my other favorites actually is, what would an ideal day in the life look like for you
Okay.
if everything turned out perfectly? And I might even, I would even use you as an example, Zach. Zach, you're building a business right now. You,
Right.
are really, wanting that financial independence to be able to live the best life that you can, helping other people grow and change. So I would ask you, in 5 years, assuming everything went perfectly, what would an ideal day in the life look like? When would you get up? What would you do when you got up? Who would you be with? And I ask these breakdown questions to really get people to start thinking and opening up to the possibilities of what your life can be like. Because you are, it sounds a little cliche, but you are the architect of your life,
Right.
especially when you take 100% responsibility for it. And that in and of itself is actually a really big mindset change that we could get into in a little bit.
Yeah.
Just the 100% responsibility thing. But those are kind of how I work with people on that. Obviously, the mechanics of that are going to change a little bit from person to person. I work with a couple different people who actually will use journaling. I myself use journaling. So I will future journal just a little bit and I'll be like, where do I want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? I'll set those goals and then I'll work my steps back and say, what's my 6 month plan? what's my
So you reverse
best
engineer it
there.
then. So you start at the end in
Yeah,
mind and stepping towards how to get there. I
yeah,
love it.
exactly. And especially as guys, because we are very goal oriented in a lot of ways, setting those big vision goals, those long term goals, is often the thing that's able to actually, in a sense, get us out of our ruts
Hmm.
and help us fixing our eyes on something else. Because I've found, at least for myself and for a lot of other guys, once you actually have an endpoint, a goal that you're reaching towards, you can do anything. You can accomplish anything you set your mind to, so long as you've got a good goal and purpose. And that can go good ways and bad ways. Take not that I want to keep bashing on Andrew Tate, but take a guy like that. He's got his one passion, his goal is to basically become the richest guy in the world, right?
Right.
To change the world in a sense, in his own image, and he's done it. He is. I can't even really describe how much of an influence he's had. And
Yeah, and he
that's
kind
the
of came out of
power.
nowhere. I mean, this guy has been kind
Yeah,
of
he
well
came out of nowhere. That is
kind of
the
for a while.
power
I
of
mean, he started
vision.
off with obviously we know he's a professional kickboxer,
Well,
but
he's
also
he's got a couple different stories, honestly. I'm
yeah,
not saying like his stories have changed, but how
right.
he got to where he was now is not a path I would follow.
No, absolutely not. How he got started in the business was, as we all know, hopefully YouTube you allow me to say this, but basically sex and gambling.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in a fallen world, unfortunately, those are two very big, powerful motivators for
Yes, they
people.
are.
I'm glad to see in some ways that he is using that to a more positive advantage, using what he's gotten at this point to a more positive endeavor. But the ends don't always justify the means, and that's
Right.
a lesson that I'm trying to implement and learn myself. Because it is a lesson you're going to be learning your whole life,
Right.
but it's a good lesson. And to be honest, I'd rather get to the end of my days, only having achieved maybe 50% of what I could do, but knowing I did it the best way that I could and didn't step
Right.
on anyone else the other, on the way.
Right. The fact that you're playing the game, you're playing the field, and just getting better versus doing shortcuts.
Yeah, exactly. Because
So,
shortcuts never pay off in the long run either. They always come back to bite you.
yeah, I mean, look at him now. I mean, whether however the whole case is going to handle with him, I mean, that kind of stuff leads into trouble. I mean,
hmm
so it makes
But
people speculate and all that kind of stuff.
enough about that. Let's kind of get back on topic. Zach, what's the next question you got for me, or is there something you kind of latched onto that I said that you want to explore a little more?
Yeah, kind of like a little bit more of your personal journey of like kind of like when you kind of woke up and realized that you didn't have a vision. I know you kind of said that you're
Oh,
5'11", 230 pounds, about 30
hmm
BMI.
Yeah. So, gosh, I wouldn't be able to say that there was a specific moment
Okay,
where all of a sudden everything just like clicked, and I'm just like, okay, I'm doing a 180, and I'm going the right direction now.
right.
But there were a couple different steps along the way where there were big changes for me. Um, Kind of starting off, the first time I really realized, how important just having health was, kind of when I first actually started my first physical job. I was
Okay,
working in a warehouse as an order selector, and I was about a straight 220, I think, at that point. I dropped a little bit, but I still wasn't super fit. I wouldn't say I've been as fit, for most of my life until about this point, but I was walking somewhere around 10 miles a day in this warehouse,
oh wow.
which, yeah, it was a lot. I actually I clocked myself on my little iPod Nano back in like the mid 2010s, and I ended up spending one night. I think it was about a 9-hour shift, and I actually walked 13 miles, like 13 and a half miles, just unloading a trailer.
Wow.
Yeah. So, all cardio, all, kind of low steady state cardio. And I actually lost at that point something like 40, maybe even 50 pounds. I dropped to an honestly unhealthy weight at that point, and I didn't have any muscle. It was all just, fat loss. And because I hadn't built any of the habits to sustain that, once
Mhm.
I left that job, everything kind of just went back up. Or actually, I didn't even leave the job. What I did is I swapped from being an order selector, walking alongside a pallet jack building skids of product. I went to a forklift operator instead, and I just kind of watched my weight go back up. And I'm like, oh, so action is actually necessary to make change, and the change is possible. The next really big mindset change came when actually, I think, I think it was right about the time that I started as a supervisor
Hmm.
at a yeah, I don't know if we want to name the company or not, but it was actually at UPS,
Okay.
which that was a bit of a trial by fire experience because I was hired as as a supervisor. Best and worst
Hmm.
decision of my life because I had no
Okay.
idea what I was getting into. I bluffed my way into that position. Completely
Okay.
honest with you, I was not qualified, but I got in, and I was determined to make it work. And I stuck with that
Sure.
job for 2.5 years and ended up climbing decently far, at least as far as I could go as a part-time student there. I ended up being in charge of the next day air operation, which is a pretty
Oh,
high level operation there. All the next day air packages that were coming in and out of the facility basically went through my little, my hands, in effect. And, I was in charge of a bunch of things there. The lesson that life experience taught me was you can bite off more than you can chew, and you can keep chewing it. You
mm,
don't just give up.
right.
And that lesson was incredible for me to learn. And I think it was like 21, 22 at the time. So that lesson, just
That's
being able
incredible.
to being able to bite off more than I could chew and then keep chewing anyway was just
Yeah.
a massive confidence boost for me. It proved that I could actually do something that I wasn't qualified to do, and I could learn on the job. Um,
Hmm.
the next big change actually came in the middle of that. And that
Okay.
was when I proposed to my wife and had a mental breakdown the night after I proposed to her because I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And I had no confidence in myself. I basically, and this is probably the biggest regret I have in my life, is I proposed to her because it was the next thing to do. I just felt like, okay, our relationship's kind of at this point. It's at this point now. Okay, I need to, I have a ring. I need to propose.
Sure.
That was probably the darkest week of my life because I proposed on Christmas Eve, had the breakdown Christmas night with her there. And then the next week, I had to actually get myself together.
Okay.
And I basically chased her down the end of her driveway, on New Year's Day, and was like, "Hey, I'm actually serious about this, and I don't care what I don't care what I'm thinking.
Right.
I've made this promise to you. I'm gonna do it." And there were two big lessons that I learned from that experience. Three, if you count, don't. There are some things you should be more firm on before you jump on them. Never just do something because it's the next thing to do. Always have a purpose and a reason behind it. So that was the first lesson. The second lesson was, oh gosh. So the second lesson was that I had to be able to myself. And what ended up happening is at that time, I had no confidence in myself. I had no personal, like, there's no real way to put it other than like spine. I didn't really
Okay.
have a spine. I was always wanting other people to make my decisions for me, especially bigger life decisions. And so I went and talked with like 6 or 7 different people during,
Okay.
that I looked up to and respected during that week period. And they all gave me different pieces of information. None of them told me, hey, this is the right thing to do, this is the wrong thing to do. They were all just like, no, you're going to need to make your own decision. And it was kind of, I was literally driving down from Portland to Salem, Oregon, or Vancouver,
Mm.
actually, Vancouver, Washington to Salem, Oregon, which is about an hour and a half drive to her place.
Oh wow.
And I basically, I still wasn't even confident that I was going to make the whole thing work or that it was even the right decision. But on the drive, I just started the drive being like, this is the path I've chosen.
Hmm.
I'm gonna make it happen. And I basically bawled my eyes out for like a straight hour on the drive down because I was so terrified of it. And about the last like 15, 20 minutes, I think the best way to describe it was God kind of just gave me a little bit of peace on it and was like, hey, you've made this decision, go for it.
Mm.
And, maybe that was just me actually coming to terms with it. Maybe that was God a little bit as well. I think I
Sure.
attributed it to God at the time. And, over time, I've kind of gone back and forth on whether that was him just being like, okay, you can jump out of the nest, go fly, or that was him going, oh, this is the right decision to make.
Yeah.
And I go back and forth on that. I'm pretty sure this was okay, out of the nest, little birdie. There you go. Make your own decisions.
Gonna
There
get
you
you
go.
outside your comfort zone. Come on now.
Yeah, exactly. And the third big lesson was
Yeah.
really the power of words.
Ah.
And that was kind of my first big lesson in terms of what you say has power.
Okay. Ain't nothing
Mm,
more impactful than proposing. I mean, that's like the biggest commitment
exactly.
someone
Yeah.
can make in their life.
And, that was kind of a big turning point for me to be like, okay, because confession time, I am
Oh.
a serial liar. I'm bad at it. I'm recovering horribly. But learning that telling the truth, that
Mm.
saying what you're going to do and then doing it is something that's necessary to make a relationship work.
Okay.
That was probably one of the most powerful life lessons I've learned. When you say you're going to do something, go and do it. And don't tell a lie. Honesty really is the best policy. And that's been a lesson I've been learning, through our relationship. We're actually celebrating three years here
Nice.
this month, and my wife is the best thing that's ever happened to me. And it happened to me is perhaps too strong of a phrase, because I was the one who made that decision. I wanted to pursue her. I didn't want to let her go.
Right.
So that was the best decision I ever made in my life, was that New Year's Day, chasing her down and being like, hey, I'm going to commit to this. We're going to make this work. And from there, the 3 years since then, because by the way, a little bit of context, this was New Year's Day 2020.
Okay.
You know what happened in 2020. Everyone
Yes.
knows what happened in
Yes.
2020. So we literally got married in the middle of a pandemic and had to swap wedding plans from this big group of family and friends to
Like a back door.
basically we had to do it in our backyard without telling anybody or posting anything on Facebook. And we were just like, okay, we are technically over the size limit, because I come from a family of 8 kids. She came from a family of 6. And we're just like, so we're technically a little over the boundary guidelines, but we're not going to tell anybody. Nobody else is going to tell anybody.
Right.
And we're just going to get married because we're done with waiting in this thing.
Okay. Okay, that's kind of a good thing. It's like, how'd you keep basically like, let's say about over 14 people? It's like, did you like confiscate like all their phones and cameras? Because like
No,
that is impressive.
we honestly, what we did was we were just, we basically told everyone, hey, please don't post anything to social media. And everyone was pretty respectful of that. And, we had a few times where we were like, hey, we're just going to take a few pictures here, with just a few people, and we can give those to you guys, and you guys can share that, and you can take pictures of us during that time. And I think the limit was like 25 people, and we were at like 28 people.
Okay.
And
So not, I mean, a little over, but not.
it was the kind of thing. Well, and this was back in Oregon, in like May of 2020, right? So Oregon, not exactly the best state when it came to COVID regulations. I'm just gonna say it.
Okay.
And we made it work, and that first year was a massive time of growth for us.
Hmm.
And the biggest thing was just learning to trust each other. And since we've done that, I'll kind of wrap this up here, because I've been going a little bit on this question of this journey here, but
Yeah.
it actually led to the third big change, which was, it's another bit of a story, so you'll have to forgive me. But in like December of 2021, we decided we'd had enough of living in Oregon, and we were going to move elsewhere. And so we bought a house in Virginia, sight
Hmm.
unseen, and moved cross country in the middle of winter to
Oh
our
wow.
own place. And it's a gorgeous spot, like, new house, a little bit of property, really great place for us.
Mhm.
But we also moved away from all of our friends and family.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And so we basically landed in a spot that we didn't know anyone. We didn't know what to do.
Hmm.
And ironically enough, the jobs that we thought we'd lined up for ourselves, I was going to work with a small startup company that was doing video production because I had a lot of experience in that. And in the time between when I got the job offer and when I moved out, the company went under and had to fire all of its employees. So
No.
we landed in Virginia, found out we didn't have jobs, and we're like, okay, we've got to make this work. And so we spent a solid month running around getting whatever job we could find. I put out over, I think, April and May of 2022, 250 job applications.
Whoa.
And I got like 10 responses back, like 10 to 12 responses back, and 6 interviews. And not all of these were jobs that were like above my pay grade. About half of them were a little bit of a step above, and about half
Okay.
of them were just entry level. And I ended up, picking up an entry level job at basically a building supply warehouse where I was helping deliver, sheetrock, metal, building supplies. And we made it work. But that also really gave my wife and I this idea that unless we made ourselves financially stable,
Hmm.
we were never going to be truly stable.
Hmm.
And we also one night, and this is honestly probably the biggest change that we had, was one night in like October, September, I don't remember exactly when, of 2022. So last year, we basically sat down and ran the math on what it would take to actually get to the point where we could have kids if we wanted to.
Hmm.
And we realized that by the time we would have enough money saved up to do that, I was going to be 30 and she was going to be like 28. And we're
Okay.
like, no, we're not doing this. And that was the point where we actually sat there for like a solid 3 hours after she'd worked like a 9-hour shift and I'd worked like a 12-hour shift.
Yeah.
And we just sat down and we're like, okay, so what are we going to do instead? And that's where we started exploring different ideas. And we tried a bunch of stuff. I've got an old Ford pickup with a winch on it. And I tried moving sheds on Craigslist for a little bit. And that was a disaster. The shed ended up being mostly fine, but I spent like 8 hours moving this shed and I only got paid like $150 for it. And
Ooh,
that
8 hours.
barely covered gas.
I was
That
gonna say, especially
barely
for a
covered
truck moving that
gas.
much weight.
Yeah, so that was the kind of thing where I'm just like, nope, this is not going to work. And we tried little like Pinterest things, like woodworking. We tried, like those little concrete planters and stuff. And it kind of finally just came around to the point where we're just like, maybe we just try stuff on the internet. And so we actually started a podcast that ran for about 12 to 15 episodes
Hmm.
that we were putting out about twice a week. And that was something we both really enjoyed. We just found we didn't have the time for it.
Hmm.
And from there, we realized one of the passions that we both had was helping other people improve.
Hmm.
And so in like January 4th, actually, of 2023. So right after New Year's, we walked into the county business office and we're like, "Hey, we're starting a business." And that's when I established my company, Justice Coaching LLC. We started it basically as soon as we could get in on the, January of 2023.
Oh, nice.
And I got my coaching certification as a life coach or a professional life coach back in February. We hopped on Twitter and we've just been going ever since.
Awesome.
So that is kind of the story there. And the lesson we learned from that really was you can make things work. If you really want to, you can make things work. And once you set a vision, anything is possible. So
And
that's kind of my story there.
I love it. I love it. I
Yeah.
mean, how it came full circle and like your own personal story and how you're now using it to help other people. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, there's nothing when you find someone that supports you and like believes in you, especially who's going to help you to
Yeah.
achieve it. There's nothing greater than that.
Well, there's a what is it? It's a quote. I don't remember who said it. Behind every great man, there's a greater woman,
Yeah.
and yeah, there's truth to that.
Oh,
I
100%.
know that without my wife, without marrying her, I would be a college dropout who was still playing video games like 8 hours a day, staying up way too late in the night, working a part-time job and watching anime. You know the cliche that you have there of like,
Yeah,
the guy living in his mother's basement? That would have been me.
that would have been
I'm
you.
serious. That would have been me.
Well, hey, shout out to your wife. I mean, hey, you're still a guy, so shout out to your wife.
That is so true. But honestly, without her, that's probably where I would be. And maybe I would have found the self-improvement journey on my own, but the
Both
fact
might have
that
been later though. That's the thing. That
it
would be
might have been later, but
yeah,
the biggest fact for me, and I think this is the key thing for guys especially,
yeah.
is responsibility and duty is honestly the biggest thing that makes a guy grow.
Mm,
Having the responsibility that I did of being married and having to provide for my wife and
right.
our 2 dogs and 6 chickens and everything else that's,
Oh yeah,
the house
chicken.
and everything else. We do. We have ducks,
That's
like
awesome.
a duck. There's a story behind that. We'll have to share it another time.
Yeah.
But knowing that I had to take care of all of this, that I was responsible for all of it and providing for that, that was one of the biggest movers for me.
Mm,
Knowing that it was all on me and that it should all be on me, that I wanted it to all be on me, that made me change.
mm.
That's really the big thing that made me change.
Well, that's how you found your vision, your purpose, and then taking
Exactly.
the action behind it. So, that incredible story. So, kind of as we wrap up today, you
Hmm.
know, what do you want to leave off with someone today? You know, a guy who's, let's go with the
Mm,
classic, in the mama's
good question.
basement, playing video games, watching anime, having lots of snacks up the wazoo. Like,
Hmm.
what would you say to someone like of that caliber who wants to get ready, wants to start today, but doesn't quite have the mindset to be consistent or the discipline just yet? How would you help encourage that person today? What would you speak to them?
Hmm. I would probably give them 3 steps.
Okay.
Three action steps that they could take right now. The first would be, honestly, the first step I would give them is find some responsibility to take.
Mm,
And I'm not the only person who says this. I think Jordan Peterson is one of the biggest minds, in this space who's really hammered on that, which is, you got to find the biggest thing that you can, the biggest thing you can carry and carry it. From my own personal journey, from what I've seen from other people, that is the biggest maturing factor for guys. So
mm,
if you are, in your mother's basement, playing video games, watching anime, eating snacks, and you're just finding that you're not happy, because, let's be honest, yeah, there's a little bit of, dopamine in there because you're
yeah.
constantly firing off your dopamine circuits. But if you stop and ask yourself for a second, am I really happy? You're not. You're miserable. And I'm sorry if that offends someone. That is the cold, hard truth of the situation. I know I was. I'm friends with guys who are. I've worked with guys who are.
Hmm.
You just don't know how painful it is yet.
Right.
So the first thing I would say is find something, find the heaviest thing you can carry and carry it as far as you can. You know, Practical examples of that is a job. A job is probably one of the best examples of that.
Right.
Get a job that's going to push you a little bit. Get a job that is going to get you outside of your comfort zone, and then dedicate yourself to that for at a minimum 1 year.
Mm,
Don't leave that job for a whole year, because you're gonna find that there's a little bit of pain in there as you're starting up.
right.
Always commit to at least a year at a job though. And I think you'll find that by the time that 6 month mark rolls around, you're enjoying it. And it's actually fun to have something to do. It's fun to have something to strive against and to push
Right.
yourself against. The second big thing I would honestly say is you got to feel the pain of the situation you're in. So sit down for just a little bit and either write it out or talk it out, do what you need to do. Imagine what your life would be like if you stayed exactly where you were in 5 years. Honestly, look at it. Yeah, you can highlight, some of the things you will still be doing that you're probably going to enjoy. I'm not going to say, I don't enjoy playing video games every once in a while still,
Sure.
but I get so much more enjoyment out of helping people, about, helping people grow, see change, not just in themselves, but in their lives. That's something that a video game can never give you. So
Right.
honestly, sit down, and figure out what your life would look like in 5 years if you stayed exactly where you were at. It's going to be a very sobering thing. Take it as it is, and use that pain, use that discouragement, use that sense of failure, because it's going to be there, to push yourself to improve, to move, to make the changes you need to make. And the third thing I would say is, honestly, find a way to get some physical energy out. I know a lot of guys in that position, myself as well, we don't feel like we have a lot of energy when we're just sitting around all day.
Right.
That's because you're not using the energy you have. I mean, yeah, you need energy in order to expend energy, but
Correct.
most of the time we're just suppressing it within ourselves. We are satisfying ourselves with this very easy, food, this very easy reward, Instagram, just swiping through Instagram, you're getting so many dopamine hits.
Oh my
TikTok
God,
is
yeah.
even worse that way. You're getting all of these little rewards. You need to actually get out and start doing something hard that's physical. Honestly, that's physically hard. That could be part of your job, but honestly, get out and just start doing as many push-ups as you can do.
Right.
And the big reason I argue for this is, as guys, we are built to be physical beings.
Correct.
It's just a matter of fact. We're given muscles, we're given strong bones, we're given the ability to grow them and use them pretty efficiently. Use them. Get out and start building your body. Get out and start exercising. Even if it's just something simple like doing some basic push-ups or doing some dead hangs. My apologies, the rainstorm just rolled in.
Oh,
So
that's all
doing
right.
some dead hangs, do things, do a plank. See how long you can hold a plank, and start challenging yourself to these little things that are physically difficult for you to do. And once you do that and you start growing in that way, it's amazing to see what kind of change happens.
I love it. 3 simple steps that would change your life, impact your life.
Right.
And if you want to, actually implement those and you need some guidance, kind of know a guy over here. I'm not going to think I'm just going to go. So, Noah. So, if you guys want to contact him, send him a DM. All this information will be below, including, I'm sure you have a website.
I do. It is in the process of being refurbished. So send people to my Twitter, send people to my Instagram even. I
Okay.
have a Facebook group as well, actually, now. That's called, let's see, the title of that is actually, what is that? Shoot, I might have to look it up. Of all the times for that to drop off the top of my head, of course it would be while I'm on a podcast with you. But the
Hey, but
group
it's
is
new. Hey, if
basically,
it's new, it's just coming up. Just know, everyone, it happens to the best of us that we do forget things. So don't worry about that. Everything that he just said, his Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, will all be in the description below. And you know what? Check him out for coaching services. I'm sure he can
Mhm.
help uplift his life. I mean, his story's impacted this life. Because Noah, you are the men of action. I'm just so glad to have you on the podcast. And stay tuned for the next episode. I hope everyone has a blessed day. Check you guys later.